Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome back. Hope everybody's having a good week. Welcome to the last Beit Midrash class before Pesach. We'll give a short administrative thing that we will not have class the next 2 weeks because the way Pesach falls is next Thursday is the first day of Yom Tov. And then the following week is the last day of Yom Tov. So it just kind of falls in a way that we won't have class the next 2 Thursdays. So I'd like to say I will miss you, but I'm hoping to see you guys during Pesach, just not on Zoom learning Hasidic. So you can make a note in your calendars. We'll resume whatever 3 weeks from today is. Anybody know?
No, let me look.
April the 20th.
I actually did that math in my head successfully, so I'm going to pat myself on the back. I'm not known for doing math well in my head, so when I do it correctly, I have to congratulate myself. It's about the small victories, people. So just kind of wanted to let y'all know, but because today is the last day, the last class we'll have before Pesach, wanted to do a little Pesach learning with you guys to help you get in the spirit and the mood. So this is actually one of my favorite classes to teach. I think it's actually a really brilliant class. So let's jump in. But to be able to get to the Hasidic part, we're going to have to do a little halachic learning. So welcome to the Shulchan Aruch. Everybody familiar with the Shulchan Aruch?
Mm-hmm. Oh, the Jewish.
One or two heads shaking. So the Shulchan Aruch, briefly, is, even though published in 1565, is kind of the go-to halachic law code for questions about law. If you don't know, if you have a question like, I don't know what to do about this, the first place rabbis and halachic decisors usually go is to the Shulchan Aruch. A couple fun facts about the Shulchan Aruch. It was written by Rabbi Yosef Karo, published in 1565. Rabbi Karo did not want to publish the book. He was pretty adamant against it. Why, you might ask? Anybody know? Because he had written a pretty extensive commentary to a different law code known as the Arba Turim, the 4 columns. He had written a pretty extensive commentary called the Beit Yosef to that book, and he really thought that was his brilliant work, and he really didn't feel the need to do the Shulchan Aruch. However, he got pressured into doing it and ended up doing it. Largely, he based his decision-making on the Arba Turim, the 4 columns, on the halachic works of the Rosh, Rabbeinu Asher, and on the Rambam, on Maimonides' Mishneh Torah. And when in doubt, he took the decision, whoever had the best 2 out of 3, if 2 of the 3 had the same decision, he went with them. That was kind of how the Shulchan Aruch was created. However, Rabbi Karo was writing in Eretz Yisrael. So his halachic opinion largely reflected Sephardic culture, because that was the culture in which he lived and grew up. However, the Shulchan Aruch spread pretty quickly through the Jewish world and became pretty popular and it found its way into the hands of Rabbi Moshe Isserles in Poland. Rabbi Isserles looked at this and said, "This is pretty good. I like a lot of what he's done, but us Ashkenazi do things a little differently." And so he wrote what are called glosses or notes kind of within the Shulchan Aruch about Ashkenazi culture. Shulchan Aruch means the set table, as in Rabbi Caro has set the halachic table for you to come sit at and dine at. Rabbi Isserly's comments and glosses are known as the mapa, or the tablecloth, as in he put the tablecloth on top of the set table. And with the combination of Rabbi Isserly's and Rabbi Caro, you have a pretty thorough examination of both Ashkenazi and Sephardic halacha and halachic decision within Jewish life. That has become the foundation of Jewish life, or Jewish halacha, till this day. That was your storytelling for today. Questions before we actually look at the Shulchan Aruch?
So do we eat rice or do we not eat rice on Pesach?
Depends on your culture. Let's see if I can do this before the clock turns. Rice falls into this category of foods called kitniot, which are not permitted for Ashkenazi to eat, but are not chametz. So if you eat kitniot, of which, by the way, there's really no halachic reason not to, other than tradition. There's really no halachic reason to not eat kitniot, unless it's just your custom not to. But so if you eat kitniot, rice is fine. If your custom is to not eat kitniot, then you don't eat kitniot. However, kitniot are not chametz. So if somebody at your seder is eating kitniot, you can just politely say, "No, thank you, I don't eat kitniot," and then just move on. You don't need to say, "I can't eat at this table," and storm out of there in a huff because they serve kitniot at the seder. I did reasonably well. I didn't get it before the clock turned, but I got it before the next clock turned, so I think I did okay. So questions about the Shulchan Aruch before we dive. So what we're going to look at today is a section from Orach Chaim, a section that deals kind of with holiday and everyday life. The Shulchan Aruch is modeled on the Torah, on the Arba Turim, or oftenly just called the Torah, in that there's 4 sections to it. Orach Chaim, which kind of deals with everyday laws and holiday laws. Yoredea, which deals largely with kashrut and mourning rituals. I don't know why those two got mixed together, but they did. Even HaEzer, which deals a lot with marital law and relationship law, and Choshen Mishpat, which deals with business law and civil law generally. So this comes from Orach Chaim, and it's all about searching for chametz and the search for chametz that you do on the evening of Passover. So you're supposed to do bedikat chametz the night before the Seder. So on the evening of the 14th of Nisan, you're supposed to do search for chametz to get it cleared out, and then you do it again in the morning, and then burn it all the following morning. So he's going to talk about checking. So if somebody wants to start us reading, we'll go ahead, and this is from the Shulchan Aruch and Rabbi Caro, and then we'll get into the interpretation of this later.
One should check every place that he/she suspects there may be chametz, lest chametz gets into it. Therefore, every room of the house, including upper rooms, need checking, since sometimes a person will go there while holding food. But wine cellars and similar places where there is no concern do not need checking.
Okay. Questions, comments, thoughts? If there are rooms in your house that you never bring chametz into, that you never eat in, you don't need to check it for chametz. That's kind of the gist of this. If there's a room that might have it, then you check it. If there's a place that you never go in with food, then there's no need to check that room. Julie, you want to do one more?
Yes. Small places and bumps that stick out of walls, which are not very high or very short, need checking for chametz. But places that are higher than a person can reach are less than 3 tefarim.
Tfachim.
Tefachim.
Tfachim. I'll explain in a second.
Okay, approximately 9.5 to 11.34 inches from the ground do not need checking. Oh,
Okay.
so I don't have to look down there, huh?
Right. So what's he saying is that, look, if there's chametz, if you have like those floor to ceiling bookshelves and you have like 8-foot ceilings and you can't reach the top of the bookshelf, you really don't need to check the top of the bookshelf. Because how's chametz going to get up there if you can't reach it anyway? Unless you have a habit of having food fights and throwing your chametz all over the place, it's not really likely to be up there. Similarly, if there are places on the wall, so tfachim is a unit of measure, it's a hand breadth. And it comes up a lot in measurements of space. By the way, a sukkah, the bottom of the sukkah has to be within 3 tfachim of the ground. So it comes up in these kinds of conversations as well. A tefach is a hand breadth. So depending on which rabbi you ask, it's 3 tfachim is somewhere between 9.45 and 11.34 inches, depending on which rabbi, how you define a tefach and a hand breadth in the first place. So this does not include the floor. The floors still need to be swept and cleaned. But if there's like a spot on the wall that's under 3 tefachim, you don't really need to go checking in. If there's like a hole in the wall, you don't need to go like digging in to clean it out. Part of what I love about this part of the Shulchan Aruch, by the way, is that it gives you all these ideas of what you don't need to do because people get so OCD about cleaning for Pesach. It's kind of like, is something really going to be all the way up there? Don't worry about it. Right? Like, I don't go into our attic ever. I try to avoid it if I can. There's no chametz in the attic. I don't need to go up there and start cleaning the attic out because nobody ever goes up there. Anyway, okay. Who would like, why don't you do one more, Shirley, and then we'll let somebody else read the Ramah.
Okay. One should sweep his/her room on the 13th of Nisan and intend to check for chametz. Burn it and be careful not to bring in more chametz. Nevertheless, it's necessary to check on the evening of the 14th of Nisan.
Okay. What's he kind of saying?
Well, he's saying that we should sweep on the 13th and check, and then we should check again on the evening of the 14th and burn it, or do we burn?
Yeah, you actually burn it the next morning, but yeah. Okay. He's saying like you really should get all your cleaning done before the 14th of Nisan. Nevertheless, you still need to check on the 14th. Right? So like try to get it done beforehand. You shouldn't still be cleaning when you're doing B'dikat Chametz. Your cleaning should be done before that. So that, and be careful not to bring in more. And then that evening on the 14th, that night of the 14th, the night before the Seder, is when you should really check it and then put it aside, and so you can burn it the next morning.
So you really, if you're turning over your kitchen, you really need to turn your kitchen over the evening of the 13th, or
the way I would interpret this is you should probably have it done before the 14th.
Okay.
Is that you shouldn't be switching your kitchen over like once it's the 14th of Nisan, because then you have, by that point, you should be doing B'dikat Chametz, which is a checking, Bior Chametz, which is the burning. You're going to be Mechirat Chametz, you're going to be selling whatever you're putting aside. And at some point you do need to cook. So you want to get all that done before you start cooking. So I think, I'm reading this a little less literally, that I think what he's saying is by the 13th is the way I'm reading it, is by the 13th, you should be cleaned so that you can do B'dikat Chametz on that night of the 14th.
Okay.
Questions, comments, thoughts? If somebody wants to read what Rabbi Isserles is going to share, like a little addition. I don't think he contradicts. He's not really contradicting Rabbi Karo at this point. He's kind of adding on to it. Somebody want to read it?
I'll read that.
Please.
Rama, every person needs to sweep his or her room before checking. Pockets which people tend to sometimes put chametz in also need checking.
Good. Right, so you should sweep your room. So I think that might be a way of saying, like, when Karo says below 3 tfachim, he doesn't mean you shouldn't sweep the floor. Rabbi Isserles is saying, no, you should sweep and clean the floor before you do B'dikat Chametz. That should be clean. And you should check the pockets of most of your pants, lest, you were out, you've put some crackers in your pants for snack for later, and, you had some crumbs in there, or, your kid stuck cookies in his pocket before on the way out, trying to hide it from you. Something like that. People put food in their pockets. I don't know. I tend not to put food in my pockets very often, but if you do, you should check your pockets to make sure there's no chametz in it. That's all.
Some people put dog treats in their pockets and go for walks with their dogs. It's probably something you have to check on.
Good, and it depends. If it's a grain-free dog treats, then you're probably okay. But a lot of those dog treats do have wheat and barley and grains in there, in which case, yes, you should probably check if the dog treats have crumbs in them. You should probably check kind of clean out your pockets, maybe just put those through the wash, something like that before Pesach. That's what he said. Everybody good so far? Okay, so now we're going to switch over to Avodat Yisrael. Rabbi Yisrael Hopstein of Koznitz, who's a student of, you can read it here, student of some of the early leaders, including the Maggid of Mezrich and Reb Levi Yitzchak Berdichev. Well-respected scholar in his own right, and led the community in Koznitz until his death in 1814 in Poland. What's kind of interesting here is Avodat Yisrael is not going to do his Hasidic interpretation based on a verse. He's going to now do a Hasidic interpretation based on the Shulchan Aruch. That's going to be what we just read is going to be his foundation. So who would like to lead us off with that?
I'll read it.
Please.
Any place that one does not bring chametz does not need checking. This appears to imply that there are people that do not notice their own actions, only others' actions. This warns us, a place that one does not bring in chametz does not need checking. That is to say, one should not do this to notice other people's actions, but should work on fixing and noticing his or her own actions.
Good. So how's he interpreting chametz here?
Almost like any bad thing, any misdeed.
Yeah, so here's one way to think about it is, what is chametz? What is like the definition of chametz?
Well, it's anything with grain that we've allowed to sit there and rise over time.
Good, it's leavened bread products. So a grain product that has been allowed to rise or to leaven. What happens when products are leavened?
They rise.
They rise, they get puffy, right? So here he's talking about chametz as, in a spiritual sense, as things that puff you up, things that make you arrogant or make you think of yourself as better than you are. And in this way, like, it's kind of, that's spiritual chametz, is what makes you, what puffs you up and gives you kind of a false sense of confidence. So what's he saying here? You don't need to check other people's chametz. You know, worry about your own chametz. Worry about your own arrogance, about your own actions, about your own misgivings. Don't check other people's. You're responsible for your own, just as bedikat chametz, you're responsible for cleaning your own house. You're responsible for cleaning your own actions and your own sense as well. And I think we all know some of those people who say, like, can you believe that guy? Can you believe that woman? Right? But they don't actually, you know, they're very quick to judge everybody else, but not to look at themselves in the mirror.
So it's sort of a mind your own business.
Not just a mind your own
100%.
business. Yes, I think there's a little bit, but there's also a piece of it, like, worry about cleaning yourself up. Don't worry about cleaning other people up.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant.
I actually think Taylor Swift has this song about this too. It's like, she just came out with this song, like, you know, I'll look in the sun, but I won't look in the mirror, right? Like, I'll keep doing bad things, but I won't actually look at myself to say, like, why am I doing bad? But that's what we're called on to do here.
So this is the
By the
only
way, I have to tell my daughter now that I did tie Taylor Swift into Hasidic, and I'm going to be like, anyway, Stuart, yes, go ahead.
So does this imply that only during Pesach and this cleaning of the chametz is when you should concentrate on yourself and not other people? When do we start thinking of other people and correcting other people?
So look, there is a mitzvah of tochacha, of rebuke. And there is halacha around it. By the way, one of my favorite halachic concepts comes from this discussion of tochacha, which is you do not have to say something to somebody who is not going to listen to it. Think about how much how much better our discourse would be if we didn't just spout off what was in our minds and actually thought about if the people would actually listen to the feedback we were giving them rather than just, you know, telling them because we think they're wrong. Anyway, so there is mitzvot about that or halacha around that in terms of when do you do it? You do it usually soon after the action takes place that you need to rebuke. You need to do it in a kind way. You need to do it in private. But that, I think, is a little different. There's a difference between rebuke and tochacha and cleaning somebody else's mess up, right? And I think what Rebbe Hopstein here is saying is worry about your own mess. Don't worry about other people's messes. That's their issue to clean up. They need to do their work themselves also. And while you can do tochacha, while you can help them by bringing things to their attention, it's not your job to do tshuva for them. Your job is to do tshuva for yourself.
And so the idea of tikkun olam, which we all recognize as an important Judaic principle, doesn't, I guess, is not talking about cleaning up other people's personal problems, but more of a systemic global type of approach.
Yeah, so look, tikkun olam's gotten a little bit changed into what it's actually supposed to mean. I don't want to go too far down the rabbit hole here, but how do you do tikkun olam according to the Ari, Rabbi Yitzchak Luria, who's the one who created the idea of Tikkun Olam. How do you do Tikkun Olam?
Do you do tikkun nefesh, like you take care of your, you change yourself, you work on yourself? Is that what you're referring to?
Not,
I know.
the Ari actually says you do Tikkun Olam by doing mitzvot.
Okay.
By every time you do a mitzvah, you are repairing the world by lifting the spark of divinity that is stuck in this world and elevating it to its supernal location. Now it's gotten kind of transformed into something else. Without going down the rabbit hole, because I could, what I'll say is Tikkun Olam does not work in and of as an end in and of itself. Tikkun Olam is a means of connection to spirituality. But when you disconnect Tikkun Olam from Judaism and highlight it as the point of Judaism, you lose the meaning of Tikkun Olam. Tikkun Olam really only works in connection with Jewish tradition and Jewish principles. It doesn't work on its own. To actually answer your question now, Stuart, I think some of the idea of Tikkun Olam, at least from a Kabbalistic and Hasidic standpoint, is if all of us do B'dikat Chametz on ourselves, if we all clean ourselves up, if we all do tshuva, if we all fix all the things that we keep doing wrong as individuals, the world will kind of fix itself with it. And as a part of our own responsibility, we'll repair the world as part of our tshuva. I think that's kind of how they view it. Other questions, comments, thoughts? I think somewhere along the line, maybe we need to have a class just on Tikkun Olam, but not today.
There's like some Hasidic groups that tell you, do mitzvahs, do mitzvahs, do mitzvahs. But I mean, some people don't have the skill to do certain mitzvahs, and some people do. So I mean, it's just like they just like, it's a mitzvah, it's a mitzvah, do this, it's a mitzvah. And that's all you ever hear. So I mean, there has to be a balance to this of how mitzvahs are done. I mean, I understand, there's, tzedakah, and, you help the sick, and you escort the dead and all that kind of stuff. But I mean, there's just like constant mitzvahs.
So, and I don't mean this in any kind of denigrating way. That's what Chabad does. Chabad says you do mitzvot. That's why you do mitzvot, because you do mitzvot. And actually, the reason you do mitzvot is because it does tikkun olam. Every time you do a mitzvah, it brings the world closer to that messianic age. So there's a theology and it's behind it as well. Now, I think Chabad will also be quick to tell you if there are mitzvot that we can't do. They'll know we know that. There are mitzvot that some people are exempt from. Such as half the people on this call, but you do if you do every mitzvah you can, and if there's something you can't do, if you can't read Torah, we'll help you learn how to read Torah so that you can perform the mitzvah, and then that's something else you can do. And I think that's kind of the idea, is that, yes, you can't do every mitzvah. Not everybody's born able to do everyone, but the idea is you keep doing more. As Pirkei Avot says, mitzvah goreret mitzvah, that every, the performance of an action, the reward for an action causes another mitzvah to occur. And there's different ways to read that. I usually take more of a psychological approach. that, when you perform a mitzvah, it makes you more aware of the opportunity for another mitzvah as well. But that the more mitzvot you do, the more likely you are to continue doing it. That's kind of basic psychology too, right? You form habits by doing them.
Thank you.
Anybody else before we go on? Who's up for reading the next one?
I can read the next one.
Please.
Small places that are higher than a person can reach, and small places that are less than 3 tefachim,
Pachim, yeah.
frachim, do not need checking.
Good. That's the Shulchan Aruch. He's quoting the Shulchan Aruch there.
This implies that one should not say, how am I able to check my sins and transgressions when I don't remember them? This quote, small places higher than a person can reach, implies that if one does not remember them, one does not need to check them. Instead, a person needs to check and to repent over those transgressions that he or she remembers. Those a person does not remember, in any case, are annulled, since the Holy Blessing One says, if this person would remember these past transgressions, of course he or she would regret them and repent, just like he or she regretted and repented over these that they did remember.
Okay. Thoughts, comments?
So this is essentially saying, don't fret over what you don't remember. It's enough to really think about what you do remember. And if God knows you're sincere about repenting for things you remember, he'll say, if you remember the other things, you would repent for those too. So it's okay.
Exactly. That's the general gist. And he ties it back in the same way. Like, if you could reach the top of that 8-foot bookcase, of course you'd clean it. If you could get down under 3 tefachim to clean it easily, you would, because you've cleaned all the other parts. And similarly, if you're cleaning the parts that you can clean, that are accessible to you in your soul, then God will attribute it as, of course, you would have cleaned to these other parts too that you don't remember, if you had remembered them. But there's also a piece here of like, I almost feel like this is good for Yom Kippur too, is that, you're not expected to remember every single transgression you ever committed in the last year, because you probably don't even, if you ask me what I did on September, let's not take September, that was high holiday prep time. On November 3rd at 11:52 a.m. Do I remember what I was doing? No, I couldn't tell you in the first place. I was probably checking how long until I was probably getting ready for lunch. But I couldn't really tell you much else of what I was doing at that time. So, am I held, if I don't remember and I did something wrong, I can't do tshuva over something I don't remember. Like, so focus on the things you do know you could do. Focus on the times you do know you were arrogant. Focus on the times you do know you were overconfident needlessly. Do tshuva over those things. And then God will credit you as if the things that you don't remember.
I've always said that having a terrific memory can be a blessing or a curse. And if you're honestly, some people have great memories and some people don't. It's still normal, but if the people who have wonderful memories can remember all these things that they've done and spend their time trying to correct them and remember and repent, etc., I think there's a burden there for that person or those people.
No, I hear you.
Yeah, and not only that, I think that there are people who feel that in order to be doing the right thing, they have to be over scrupulous. And
Yeah,
And
and it's, you
kind
know,
of a caution against sort of it's almost an idolatry of scrupulousness that that you see in certain people.
yeah, I was gonna say, and that's a level of arrogance too, right? That's chametz itself, right? Like, I have to do all these details so meticulously correctly because I am pious enough to do it. Now, I mean, you could take the opposite tract of, you know, I'm so insecure that I feel like I need to do something, like I need to be meticulous in my observance as a way of feeling like I'm in control of something, which I think is a different transgression. There's a great song quote I think of often. It's heaven help me when I think I'm not enough. Heaven help me when I think I am. You know, it's a little bit of that too.
We have to be very careful not to be harsh critics of people, you know, in some situations, people are very harsh critics of your observance, and, you know, you're supposed to be this way and you're not doing it 100% right. And that's, I mean, I'm not, this group is totally different, but I'm just saying that can be very destructive in somebody's life, and when they're just trying to live as a good Jew.
Yeah, and again, this goes back to the tochacha. You know, what is the point of the tochacha? Is it to criticize and make somebody feel less because they messed up, or is it an educational moment, a teaching moment, as we say? Is this a time to be able to say, you know, I see you doing that. However, you know, halachically, there's a spot where you do it this way instead, and this is why, and you can educate them. Then they can be like, oh, great. Not in a way to tell them what they're doing is wrong, but to help teach them and guide them to the right track. There's a great Hasidic story along that line of that I use a lot around prayer, is that, you know, there's a shepherd who prays to God every morning and says, you know, Hashem, I love you, I care for you, I'm grateful for everything that you've given me, and because of everything you've given me, I love you and would do anything for you. And that's what the shepherd prays every morning. And one time, a rabbi was walking by when he was saying this, and the rabbi said, what are you doing? It's like, oh, I'm praying to God. And the rabbi says, that's not how you pray to God. Let me teach you how to pray to God. And he teaches him the Shema, and he teaches him the Amidah, and he teaches him how to put on talit and tefillin, and he teaches him all the rituals, and then the rabbi goes. The story goes that the rabbi has a dream in which a voice says to him, you know, you are doomed because you have taken away my most precious blessing. And the rabbi gets scared, goes back to the shepherd and says, you know, what's going on? And the shepherd says, you know, you left and I forgot exactly how to put on the tefillin. And I couldn't, I remember the Shema, but I couldn't remember how Ve'ahavta goes. And the Amidah can't get any of the Amidah, it was too long. But you also told me I shouldn't say the blessing I was saying before, so I haven't been saying anything. And the rabbi says, go back to saying what you were saying. He tells him the dream and says, you know, this is the dream I had, this is the vision I had, go back to saying what you were saying. So there's a time and a place for teaching and education, and there's a time and a place for saying, you know what, this is coming from the whole heart. It might not be perfect, but it's pretty darn good. So, you know, keep it going. Other questions, comments, thoughts? All right. somebody want to finish it up for us?
I'll do that. Every person needs to sweep his, her room before checking. This seems to be a hint to turn one's thoughts on the 13th of Nisan and to prepare oneself on the 13th so that he or she is able to check at night. If a person does not turn one's thoughts first when he or she wants to check, all of a sudden, of course, he or she will not see all chametz and will say, I am righteous. One needs to turn his or her thoughts first, and of course, one will find some chametz there.
What?
All right, so what's he saying?
You don't prepare yourself before you look for chametz or look at yourself for your deeds. You won't see what you're looking for. You won't see chametz if you're, so if you're just sort of going through it mechanically and don't think about it beforehand. You won't actually see chametz. You won't actually see your own actions that maybe deserve repentance. You just won't be in the right frame of mind.
Yeah, if you don't spiritually prepare yourself, if it comes to Erev, like the 14th of the 14th of Nisan rather, and you're like, oh shoot, I need to do B'dikat Chametz. Oh, let me just do it quickly. I'm good, right? Like you're going to do it. You're not going to have the thought or the kavanah, the intention or the focus to really do it. You're just going to do it quickly. And when we do things quickly, we don't necessarily always do them well. So you have to spiritually prepare yourself for this work. You can't just jump into it. You need to work yourself into it. Cleaning your house is not something that can be done quickly on the 14th of Nisan. It's not supposed to be. You're not supposed to do all of the cleaning. You're supposed to prepare it ahead of time so that you can check on the 14th and then burn it on the 15th. That means leading up, we need to be doing some of that spiritual work ourselves. Whether that's thinking about the times we've been overconfident or arrogant, whether that or self-righteous, or whether that some of that spiritual work might be, what does Pesach mean to me this year? How is this Pesach different from all other Pesach? What is different for me this year in celebrating it that I can actually learn and get something out of it? Because if we don't spiritually prepare ourselves, then how are we supposed to get anything out of it? How are we supposed to benefit from this holiday if we don't actually do any spiritual work to get ready for it? And I think that's kind of where I really love this teaching, is because he takes this halakha that we know we're supposed to do in terms of checking for chametz and turns it into a spiritual check as well, and says, it's not enough to just clean up all the crumbs from your floor and from your counters and to kasher your pots and pans and to switch out the dishes and whatnot and do all the spend ungodly amounts of money on all the Passover food because it's so much more expensive, but that's a different issue. Like, it's not enough to just do those things on the physical level. He says, how are you spiritually preparing yourself for the holiday also? Because then you can actually leave Egypt and actually feel like you're leaving Egypt rather than just walking through the ritual as usual. Or I should say, walking through the ritual like we might do in other years. Questions, comments, thoughts? I'll take this down for now then. If you need it back up, I can put it back up. But wishing everybody Chag Kasher v'Sameach, Zis and Pesach, if you prefer the Yiddish. somebody somewhere is going to be proud of me for quoting something in Yiddish. And wishing you much good effort and work in doing the spiritual preparation, so that when we leave Egypt together next Wednesday night, you're spiritually ready and prepared for the journey. And again, we'll pick up in about 3 weeks on the 20th. But wishing y'all a Chag Sameach, and I hope to see y'all between now and then.
Take care. Bye.
Nice to
Have
see
a
you,
safe
Eddie,
week, everybody.
and,
Be well, everybody. Take care.
and Josh, and Mickey, and Shirley, and Rabbi.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank y'all. Kol hakavod.